Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your patience. I'm Gregory Thomas. I'll be serving as your Master of Ceremonies this evening for our 29th Annual Lloyd George Seeley Lecture, which will honor a professor from the college here, but also, as you read in the brochure, a man who had a very storied history in law enforcement, but also was a founder of NOBLE, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. So I thank you for your patience. We're going to begin now. Let me just do a few housekeeping things for you first. I'm going to take some podium privilege and just remind you to do all we can to keep this coronavirus where it is, not with us, to practice good hygiene. And I say that because in my office, D.A. Gonzalez appointed me as what my staff is calling me, the coronavirus czar. I don't know what that means yet, but I do know that I'm getting a lot more education about the fact that a lot of this that's going on now is about personal responsibility too. So as you need to take heed to that when it comes down to doing the proper things when you're around people, if you're coughing or sneezing, using proper etiquette, but also when you're going to the restroom, not trying to get too personal, do the right thing on the way out for the people. Also, one other thing administratively too, so I have to also let you know where the exits are. You know, to your right or left as you see the exit signs, and then the elevators are where you came in on, and then it's the stairwells down here as well. So if something were to happen, you need to get to those exits to make your way off of this floor. Now, studies show that during any given disaster or any crisis, people go into a mental fog, and they forget where things are. Hence the reason why on airplanes, as you travel, they tell you everything before the plane takes off, right? For muscle memory, right? But they still know when an event occurs, you will go into a mental fog. So here's a little tip for you. If something were to happen inside here, follow me because I'm out of here. Okay, so just look for where I am. I'm gone. I mean, this MC thing is overrated. I'm out of here. But let me start now by, as it says in the program, introducing one of the key sponsors of our lecture this evening. And I heard the voice, Madam President, so I... No, I did not say that. That's not exact. I did not say that, but welcome. Just starting now. So I'm going to introduce the chair of the Department of Africana Studies, who's a key sponsor for this lecture on an ongoing basis. That's Professor Jessica Gordon Nemhard.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 29th Lloyd George Seeley Lecture and Exhibit. Welcome, President Mason. Welcome, Chief Davis. Welcome, New York City Chapter President Harrison. We're here to celebrate Lloyd George Seeley, who was a faculty member here at John Jay in addition to the founder of NOBLE. We're here to celebrate professionalism, excellence, and justice in action in law enforcement with our colleagues from NOBLE, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. This is an important and long-standing collaboration at John Jay between Africana Studies and NOBLE. It helps us to highlight the importance of applied knowledge and informed practice. Just in the last 3 years, we've had discussions here about community justice and community policing, women in policing, and tonight we'll talk about enhanced police and community relations. Also, this is a collaboration with John Jay's Lloyd Seeley Library that creates an exhibit to go along with this lecture, and it's actually outside, right by the reception area. So after this lecture, you'll have a reception and a chance to look at some of the archives with a bunch of books and pictures from Lloyd Seeley. I represent the Department of Africana Studies, dedicated to providing a rigorous and relevant Black Studies curriculum to all John Jay students. We're a small department, but we have 3 important minors, Africana Studies Honors, and a Community Justice minor. We also co-designed and support the new Human Services and Community Justice major. So welcome, everyone. Thank you. Thank those who made sure this program happens every year, Mr. Thomas, Lisa Galloway Perry, who's disappeared. Thanks to Ellen Belcher and Larry Sullivan at John Jay's Lloyd Seeley Library, all our guests and my students, and thanks to our keynote, Chief Davis, sorry. Enjoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the rules of when you're emceeing, you should never, ever, when you see people in the audience, point people out, because you're going to forget somebody or make somebody feel like as though they're not important. But I'm taking that risk, podium privilege. Just joined us is the Chief of Police in Seattle, Washington, Carmen Best. Please stand. Member of Noble, first female African-American police chief of Seattle, right? So Noble does that. She was in town for another event this morning. I understand you were at the Police Academy this morning, right? Okay, so welcome. So I took that privilege, and I hope I didn't offend anybody, but that's Seattle. This is like far away, so I really appreciate that. Moving back to the program, I now have the pleasure of introducing the president of the college here, who I just want to say a little bit about personally, because she has been, in her prior role with the Department of Justice, a big supporter of Noble in general, but more particularly as I was national president, 30th national president, from July 2015 to July 2016. We had a spate of shootings around the country, you may recall, that were police involved with African-American males on the other end, unfortunately. And as president, I had to do have a lot of conversations with the Department of Justice, with the White House, about our response and our thoughts on it. And along the way, we would have to consult with President Mason on our thoughts, which were always candid and real and supportive. So I want to say that. And then we move now to her being, again, the first woman and the first African-American president of John Jay College. She's here now. She continues in that role now to support Noble and to personally support me. I want to say thank you for me, because you do a lot for me. And I can't thank you enough. I want to do it publicly, so I did that. And her bio is in the program here, so I ask you that you now join me in welcoming the president of John Jay College, Carol Mason.
So what he didn't say is, even though he's younger, he's my big brother. I didn't say older, I said my big brother. And he has done so much for me, he and his wife, in terms of welcoming me here to New York, because I'm not a native I'm a native Long Islander, but I'm not a native New Yorker, and it is quite different. And they have been a great resource for me, and I'm looking for a repeat of the steak dinner. They got this great place for steak, if those of you meat eaters, and I'm a carnivore. So I always love the Lloyd Seeley lecture, because it's an opportunity for me to see old friends, and I'm going to be hugging you soon. So when I saw you walk in, I was like, yes. And CJ, who you're going to hear from, Chief CJ Davis. These are long-standing relationships that started when I had the privilege of serving at the Department of Justice and working closely with law enforcement. And I love it when we had the big Noble anniversary that the office that I oversaw provided the seed money that started Noble. I didn't, the organization did. And it is wonderful to see that partnership still continue. And it's wonderful for me to be still part of all of this work through being able to have the privilege of being the president of John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And all you young folk in the room, these leaders here that you have the opportunity to interact with today, take advantage of that opportunity, because to have them all in the same room here today doesn't always happen unless you're at a Noble conference, which you need to put on your agenda. I haven't been invited lately. Hint, hint, hint. I have to be invited. But hint, hint, hint. Because there was a time where I never missed a Noble event, but somehow it just hasn't happened. But I know it will happen. But I've gotten to have new Noble friends here in the New York region. And we have an alumna of John Jay, who's also the first woman president of the New York chapter of Noble, who graduated from John Jay in 2018. So please stand up. And I had I didn't say your name. This is Judith Harrison, who she was one of our early graduates of the NYPD master's program we have here, and she's one of the folks who got her promotion. The program was designed to have people come in and get their master's who were in leadership roles in the NYPD, but to equip them to rise even higher. And she rose there before she got her degree. So at the graduation ceremony, we announced, she already knew she was getting her promotion. So it's wonderful to have you. I got that right, didn't I? Okay, I was like, you're looking at me. I was like, that's the way I remember it. So I just want to recognize you all. And I love the theme of this this program. So I'm going to tease Andrea, who is my speechwriter, Andrea Clark, who's wonderful. But I didn't need a speech tonight, because this work about community relations is critical to my work at DOJ and why I wanted to be here at John Jay to start with, and to be able to come full circle and still be part of this work. So Gregory mentioned some of the some of the high profile, thanks to social media, shootings that got attention and that caused a national crisis in how do communities and law enforcement relate to each other. And I applaud Noble for taking the lead on a lot of this work, because we're talking about relationships in communities of color. And what people don't always recognize is that many of our law enforcement leaders are people of color. And we got some strong black women leaders, because this is the second year. Right, yeah. And so, and I saw you on TV recently. I was like, I know her. It was something good, just to be clear. Just everybody knows. But so it was actually Jeremy Travis who wrote a letter to me when I was the Assistant Attorney General at the Office of Justice Programs, and said, the Department of Justice has an opportunity to be in the forefront of leading how we're going to improve relationships between law enforcement and, in particular, communities of color. And they came down for a meeting, Jeremy and a group of other folks, including David Kennedy and some other people, Tracy Mears, Tom Tyler, and they talked to us about what are we going to do. Then I went radio silent on them. I didn't talk to them for months, because I got their idea and I said, we've got to do something with this, and I needed funding. So I twisted the arms of all of my colleagues across the department. And for those of you who know Ron Davis, he's like, yeah, he said, my arm is still hurting because I twisted it behind his back. But I had no appropriation, but I knew this work had to be done. And so I cobbled together a little shy of $6 million and put out an RFP. And I said I wanted the leading thinkers on these issues. So we knew about procedural justice, racial reconciliation, implicit bias. 2 of the 3 are now here at John Jay, to sit there and try to figure out how do we work with communities and law enforcement together to tackle these issues using all 3 of these deeply researched principles and see what happens. And under the leadership of John Jay, they prepared a proposal that I ended up funding to the tune of $5.75 million. So the groundbreaking work in how to bring these 3 core principles together to help law enforcement in 6 communities, and we also had an extensive evaluation component in it, figure out how to address these issues between communities and law enforcement. And that work is now done. The reports by Urban are out there. I encourage you all to read them. But what it showed us is, in a lot of the principles that we knew from the origin of the COPS office, and when I say COPS, in this world here at John Jay and CUNY, they think it means Council of Presidents. When I first got here, they said, you have a COPS meeting. I was like, why? And I'm thinking community-oriented policing services. That's what COPS is to me. So the COPS office was created because it was supposed to create this paradigm where people began to think of it as policing as community-oriented. And we had many, many forums between IACP, Noble, COPS, lots of people during this challenging time period talking about this. And what we discovered, it's kind of like an onion or an apple, whatever you want to talk about, peeling, that we had gotten to the surface when we created the community-oriented policing services, but we hadn't dealt with the really difficult things. And the Michael Brown and the Garner incident got us to the point where we had to peel that onion back a little bit more. And I will say that in peeling that onion back more, the change in the demographics of the leaders of our law enforcement agencies, so they look like CJ. They look like our chief from Seattle. That makes a difference in this work. The fact that we've got a school like John Jay that is educating the next generation of police leaders, whether they are in master's programs, undergraduate programs, I am counting on you young people. I'm looking at you. Because how many of you are students here at John Jay? Stand up, please. Stand up. I want you to hear me, and I want you to stay standing, because I want you to really hear what you're going to hear from Chief Davis and hear what you're going to hear from Chief Harrison and understand the responsibility we're passing on to you all. Because we want you all to do this differently and better. And we want you to understand that there's no dichotomy between police and communities. You are the community. Law enforcement is part of that community. And one of the things that we think of when we do this work here and we bring you all here, and the reason why it's a privilege to be educated alongside folks who are going to challenge you. The social advocates are in your classrooms with you today, and you're going to build those relationships and build an ability, a language to talk to each other and understand each other and communicate with each other, and you're going to do this better than we've done it because we trust and believe, and you can sit down now. And so, now, I wanted you to stay for a while till it got uncomfortable because it needs to be uncomfortable because we're going to ask you to do the uncomfortable. And I believe that you're going to go out there and represent John Jay across the world because CJ recruits down there. We got the chief from Texas who was here last year was recruiting here, and you're going to recruit here now too, aren't you? Okay. So I'm say that you're going to be these folks up here soon, and I know I'm taking more time than I was supposed to in talking about this and introducing this program, but this subject is one that's not a one-off subject. This is a subject that you're going to be wrestling with every day that you're in policing, and every day that those of us who are not in policing are going to wrestle with to support them to do this right. And we've got this leadership here, and Lloyd Seeley set a wonderful example for all of us about how you build this community and how you build these relationships. And I am looking forward to what CJ is going to tell us today, what Chief Harrison is going to tell us today. And I am grateful for the faculty members who brought these students out in such great numbers because you're going to be the chiefs of the future. And as I say on a regular basis, I have hope and I'm inspired and I'm excited because you're going to be leading us. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to open up the program today.
Thank you, President Mason. So building on her introduction, it's my pleasure now to introduce the current chapter president of the New York chapter of Noble, which, by the way, for the record, is the largest chapter in the country with I'm just saying. 63, 4 chapters now across the country, or something, that number? Yeah, so, but we've been.
We have 4 that are in the hopper.
Right.
So it'd be like close to 70.
Close to 70, there you go, you heard it from the president. So close to 70 chapters on its way, and we've been the largest for a long time. We also have a collegiate chapter, which I need to make sure you all know about, new membership category for students who are in college. You can join Noble through that venue, and then we'll take care of you along the way and mentor you and make sure you meet the right people and pass your classes and stuff like that. It's critical. But now, again, let me introduce the current chapter president of the New York chapter, Judith Harrison.
Good evening. I'm happy to see this room packed. So thank you all for being here. And it's my pleasure to address you at the 29th Annual Lloyd Seeley Lecture. For years, John Jay has been educating and preparing scholars, like all of you that just stood up, to become successful professionals in the field of criminal justice. And I'm proud to say, as you mentioned, President Carol Mason, I'm proud to say that I'm an alumnus of John Jay. And I know that I'm in good company because Lloyd Seeley was an alumnus of John Jay also. Lloyd Seeley was also a man of many firsts. He was the first African-American to graduate from the FBI National Academy. He was the first African-American precinct commander in the New York City Police Department. And while in the New York City Police Department, he was also the first African-American to serve as Assistant Chief Inspector and Borough Commander. He's a person for whom John Jay's library is named after. And he's also one of Noble's founding fathers, or founding members. Lloyd Seeley was the epitome of professionalism. He personified ambition and determination, and he lived his life as an example for others to emulate. Today's theme, 2020 Vision, enhancing police community relations, is so appropriate when we speak about Lloyd Seeley. Lloyd Seeley was community policing before community policing was community policing. Now community policing, neighborhood policing, you have all of these catchy phrases, right? He epitomized what community policing was because he connected. He connected with the community. He was from the community and he connected. If you Google Lloyd Seeley and you look at the images that come up, you'll see him doing community policing. There's a famous picture of him leaning down, because he was a tall man, he was leaning down, speaking to a young lady on the street. You see other pictures of him talking to people. That's what community policing is, connecting, listening, and addressing people's concerns. So I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to your remarks, Chief. I want to thank President Carol Mason. I want to thank Rulissa Galloway Perry, Jessica Gordon Nemhart, and the Africana Studies Department. We thank you for your partnership with Noble. We thank you for your partnership with the New York City Police Department. And to our Noble National President, we thank you again for being here. We know that the demands on your schedule are great, but you graced us with your presence. We thank you for your leadership. We thank you for who you are, and we look forward to your comments today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm saying that consistently now. I said, Madam President, it's kind of cool. I like that, and very appropriate as that as well. So I have the pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker. I mean, her bio is in your brochure. A lot to say about her. Again, she's a friend, colleague of mine on the board for a number of years, the 42nd National President. And just so you'll know, for those who are scoring at home, it's the second year in a row that we've had the National President here speaking, and the second year in a row that National President has been a woman, right? But wait, there's more. Because our incoming National President is a woman as well. So we take pride, and that's Linda Williams, who's retired from the Secret Service, so we take pride in having, I'm confident, the only organization in law enforcement with 3 consecutive women presidents. So we take pride in that. Noble is very prideful in our ability to bring everybody into the fold. And speaking of which, I want to just name 2 things about our speaker before she speaks. So she was appointed there in 2016, and then 2 short years later, it was reported that violent crime dropped 13% in Durham, North Carolina. That's a 4-year low. So we need to take pride in that, because most chiefs don't last 4 years, right? So, no, I didn't mean you, I meant most. It's the most, you're the mostest, so I wasn't really referring to you. But that's something we should take pride in, because again, it's not easy to do that no matter where you are in the country. And North Carolina in particular, as a state, for the first time in North Carolina history, has 6 women who are currently police chiefs. All the women I'm referring to are African American and members of Noble. So, 7. Will you stop? 7. Wow. Go for it. Well, I have 6 here. I'm going to read the 6. You'll help us with the 7th. That's Raleigh, North Carolina, Morrisville, North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina, Durham, Winston-Salem, and Littleton, North Carolina. The last one is Morrisville. Okay. See, so we have that number of 7 now. So that's something that you should not look at as being common, because, again, policing's changing finally and opening the door more for the people that belong there. So with that, I now take pride in introducing our 42nd National President of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, Cerelyn C.J. Davis.
Wow. How's everybody? Y'all already had dinner? No. Okay, so don't get funny on me when I start talking. I want to see everybody paying attention. I'm not going to be long. How many of you have a church that you're a member of? Have you ever heard that if the preacher gives a short verse, that means his sermon's going to be long? And if he gives a long verse, that means his sermon's going to be short. I got a long verse for you tonight, so I will not be long. It's always a pleasure to be around my noble brothers and sisters. I'm just honored, for one thing, to be here and to be your guest speaker tonight. Been a member of Noble now for 20 years, and I started in the organization when I was a sergeant. And this organization grew me up and groomed me to be where I am today. So I just want to say greetings and good evening to everybody tonight. And this occasion, the 29th Lloyd George Seeley Lecture occasion is a special occasion for Noble every year. I certainly don't feel like a stranger here, because during my law enforcement career, I've had the pleasure of working on a cultural diversity task force with John Jay College. I've worked on other projects with John Jay College, and of course, Carol already mentioned your president. I know her as Carol. She's been a friend of mine and a supporter and a mentor for many, many years. And also Dr. David Kennedy, worked with him as well. So it's a pleasure to be here amongst people that I know so well. And I will say that your president is known all over the world. Everybody knows Carol Mason. She is an erudite in her field, and you are in great hands here at John Jay College. I guarantee you that. This is an institution that has been respected for its work in activism in the social sciences and criminal justice arena for many, many years. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. Now I've got to thank just a few people. You know how they say at church, protocol already been established. Protocol not quite established just yet. My brother and president, past president of the national organization, Greg Thomas, thank you for helping to get me here. And our New York chapter, our Noble New York chapter, the hardest partying folks I know in the world. They took me to dinner last night. My friend, Judy Harrison, I like hanging out with Judy because she is normally the tallest person in the room, and everybody just walks out of her way. She has command presence everywhere she goes. Thank you, Judy. Our chair here of the Africana Studies Program, Department of Africana Studies, Ms. Jessica Gordon Nemhart, and Rulissa. Rulissa, where are you? She's somewhere around? Rulissa helped me get here. She worked with my assistant day in and day out to make sure that I showed up for this event. So thank you all again. Thank you, Noble Chapter, New York Chapter members for this opportunity. Last night we went to dinner, and a couple of folks that went to dinner with us, Yamel, right here in front of me with the camera, and Michelle, they have been doing work in the vineyards. They've been doing work with legislators in the state of New York, talking about what laws need to be changed. That's what Noble members do. When I found out that they had been involved in that type of work in the last couple of weeks, I was really, really excited to hear that. They actually had a conversation with Eric Garner's mother. She had not spoken to anybody in law enforcement in a positive way until Noble members brought her in and embraced her and talked to her about the atrocity that occurred. And it takes courage, not just for her, but for law enforcement to step beyond our comfort zone and do the things that we know are right to do. And that's what Noble is really all about. So again, thank you for the work. We've already mentioned Carmen Best. Carmen Best is a rock star, chief of Seattle. If y'all didn't see her, she was on the Super Bowl commercial. Yes, she was. Did you all see her on the Super Bowl commercial? You need to look back at it. A profile with her hat broke down. I said, that's my girl. And Chris, thank you for being here as well. So I want to talk to you tonight about police and community relations, a title that can sound cliche sometimes. We've been talking about community policing for years, but as we enter another year of mass confusion and divisiveness in our nation's capital, and I'm going to say it again, confusion and divisiveness in our nation's capital, and police agencies around the country who are just trying to serve and protect in this current climate without having to declare a political party. We don't want to be a part of a political party. We just want to do what it is that we were called to do. We don't want to be a Democrat or a Republican when it comes to our work. When we go to the polls, that's different. But when it comes to our work, we don't want to get caught up in the foolishness. There are police officers who just want to be supported by an administration that knows their plight, but also recognizes that everybody wearing a uniform today isn't necessarily trying to build relationships with all communities. The operative word here is all communities. So when I started in this work back in, there was this federal mandate. There was a federal campaign that was going on to hire more women and minorities to better diversify the police industry, to improve community policing and efforts. You know, we need to look like the community we serve. So I was a member of a class of 35 in Atlanta, and yoo-hoo, the ATL, that's right. So I was out of 35 recruits, there were 11 women in my class. And that rush of trying to hire more minorities and more women caused us to have more women in that class than usual. But when it was time to graduate, I was the only person that graduated, the only female that graduated out of that class. So the record showed that the Atlanta Police Department had hired X amount of minorities and X amount of women, but it never said how many actually became police officers. So some of that checking the box was going on back then, and we weren't actually representing the communities that we serve until we started seeing a change in our leadership. And when we started seeing the change in the leadership, is when our department became more and more diversified, because it was authentic then. The leadership wanted us to represent the community that we serve. So tonight, I'm particularly moved at the fact that I stand on the shoulders of those who paved the way for Americans and other minorities to serve in leadership roles in police organizations across America. Lloyd George Seeley was among the trailblazers who seized the moment to change the trajectory of law enforcement history for Black officers. He and others championed the cause to establish my organization, Noble. He was a founding member in 1976. He and 59 others pledged to ensure Blacks had fair opportunities to rise through the ranks and were represented in the highest executive positions. I stand before you as a living example and byproduct of NYPD's own Lloyd Seeley. And as you perhaps know, he was in fact the first African-American officer in NYPD to make rank as a commander of a police station and the first African-American officer to graduate from the FBI National Academy, which I am a graduate of. Carmen is a graduate of, and many other Black chiefs around the countries are graduate. Are you a graduate of the FBI? All right. NYPD's on. Outstanding. Gerald, I should have known. So, and he later served as a professor and researcher here at John Jay College. So let's look at a snapshot in time. I started my career in Atlanta, as I said, home of the Civil Rights Movement. The history of the movement became a part of who we were in our city. The history of those individuals who paved the way for us to be in those positions that we were in, we took very seriously, because people died so that we could stand here. It's only a few of those individuals that are left that did all of that marching and screaming and hollering. But they died so that we could be here. And so that history was a rich part of our department. We didn't have very many racial issues when it came to serving the community, because it was embedded in our minds that our work was more about those people who paved the way and what we owed to them and to what their vision was, than it was about just being a police officer. So in 1963, here in New York, I can only imagine the obstacles that were undoubtedly ever present in Lloyd Seeley's day-to-day interactions within a police force already facing racial tension from a mounting civil rights movement throughout the United States. After all, just a few years prior to that, in 1955, Emmett Till was brutally killed. Rosa had already refused to get up. The Montgomery bus boycott had desegregated the bus system. The Little Rock Nine took a classroom seat at Central High. There were sit-ins at Woolworth lunch counter in Greensboro. It was a dangerous time, a precarious time, where King and his unwavering disciples were risking it all, riding. They were riding for freedom. They called them freedom riders. You all heard about the freedom riders. Those were the people that risked their lives so that we could be here today. They were sitting down to stand up. They were sitting down to take a stand and publicly proclaiming that separate was not equal. And as Sergeant Lloyd Seeley was just getting accustomed to his new role in the NYPD, down in Birmingham, at that same time, in 1963, police and fire officials attacked segregation protesters with tear gas, fire hoses, and police dogs. King was later locked up in Birmingham jail, where he managed to write that famous letter that we all know about. Then King stood on the National Mall in DC and spoke to the world about a dream about little black girls and white girls playing together, about eliminating the stench and hatred and inequality throughout America. And we all know this song, America, America, God shed thy grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shiny sea. How contradictory is that? But we sing it like everything is okay. I have a problem with it sometimes. Do you have a problem with it sometimes? I have a problem with it sometimes because we're not living that dream like we're supposed to be. Seems like every day we're contradicting these stanzas. I imagine that Martin Luther King's dream was, in fact, his vision, a clear vision of what peace and equality would be like for all people. Every community, every man, woman, and child, no matter the race or origin. So as we have entered into this new year, 2020, the only thing I could think about as we came into the new year was that we're in a year of 2020 vision. 2020 vision. It causes me to think about visual acuity. So your visual acuity, when it's 2020 vision, is the standard for clear or sharp vision. In our police agencies, we develop strategic plans that incorporate the vision for our agency, a vivid picture of who we strive to become, who we are, not to ourselves, but to the people we serve. Who are we? So I ask, who are we in 2020? The warrior or the guardian? As police professionals, our work has become more and more challenging as we attempt to change the current narrative and perceptions of law enforcement's aggression towards minority communities, embracing Sir Robert Peel's theme. How many of you are familiar with Sir Robert Peel, the founder of policing? Some of you are. If you're in criminal justice, you might want to look it up because he's the one that brought about that theme, that the police are the public and the public are the police, and that there were two principles associated with that theme. The first one was that police and the basic mission for which the police exists is to prevent crime and disorder. And the second principle is the ability of the police to perform their duties is dependent upon public approval of police actions. Isn't that something? He said we can't do what we're supposed to do unless you tell us it's okay. But are we following that today? Not really. Not really. Though these principles were established years ago, New police reforms dictate that police should incorporate community members in policy development, that citizen review boards will help ensure transparency, that the very essence of our work must be tied to customer satisfaction. So if we did a customer satisfaction survey around the country, how do you think the police would fare right about now? I see some heads shaking. Not good. That means we've got some work to do. So I ask you tonight, what can we do as law enforcement professionals to improve police and community relations? Today, as we witness history repeat itself with untrusting relationships between the police and the communities that we serve, how do we as a nation operationalize the dream? What will it take to bridge that gap between the police and all of our communities? Memories of tragic police shootings remain vivid in the minds of many Americans today. And as I mentioned, our noble members were brave enough to talk to Eric Garner's mother, but we need more of that around the country when those types of incidents occur. It takes contemporary leadership to require officers to get out of their cars, into the communities, getting them familiar with the people that they're serving. They'll actually begin to enjoy their work more and get more support from the community because they'll get to know those individuals before something bad happens. And that is the essence of building relationships, knowing who those individuals are, knowing them by name. So, it shouldn't just be that we respond to crisis and respond when someone's shot or a crime has occurred, when there's a dead body, there's a shooting. It's more of we are here all the time, and hopefully we can prevent shootings if we're there more and we're present more and we're visible more. At no other time in recent history can I recall the very essence, the legitimacy of our profession, public or private, being so vigorously debated and questioned across all races, ages, socioeconomic groups, and cultures. The police, who are they? Warrior or guardian? I think based on just a little bit of history I've shared tonight, we can safely say that throughout history we have been portrayed more as warriors and at times even terrorists, and in some cases rightly so. But we all know that the majority of police officers come to work every day and put their lives on the line to serve honorably. There are some really, really good cops out there, working every day to provide safe neighborhoods and build community trust, working hard to change the narrative, working in their spare time, volunteering in their spare time to impact young people, to coach, to mentor. But if you think back just a few years, the image of the police was different in the 1980s. I used to watch all of the police shows on TV. I used to want to be a detective. I didn't want to go to the police academy. I just wanted to sign up and be a detective. And they said, you can't do that. I didn't want to wear the uniform. I just wanted to wear a suit and put a badge on my belt and tell people what to do and go out on crime scenes. That's what I wanted to do. But it didn't work out that way. I had to go through the academy like everybody else. But I was obsessed with police shows like Dragnet. All right, who said, Uh-huh. Who knows about Dragnet? Okay, just the facts, ma'am. Policewoman. What about Christy Love? See, the students don't know nothing about that. You all weren't even born then. Hawaii Five-0, Ironside, Hill Street Blues, the FBI with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. and Law and Order. How many of y'all watch Law and Order? See? Young folk. Look at them. See? What? And other widely popular box office hits like Terminator, Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, 48 Hours, and Beverly Hills Cops. These were feel-good cop movies that influenced Americans in a different way. Moviegoers of all ages, races, and cultures, without hesitation, collectively rooted for these action heroes. And many times the hero was a police officer, struggling against incredible odds, which generally included life-threatening situations, notorious lawbreakers, and they usually included a vehicle pursuit of some kind, which typically ended up in perceived victory for the police officer and the community celebrating that he got the bad guy. That's the way it typically was. Indeed, that was a different time in pop culture and in our national history. But in recent years, national and local headlines are filled with accounts of perspectives on what is described as a growing divide between law enforcement and the communities we serve, and particularly communities of color. More recent movies, like The Hate U Give. How many of y'all saw that? Uh-huh. Made you leave out of there feeling some kind of way, didn't it? It made me feel like some kind of way, that's for sure. Queen and Slim. Okay. I'm not even gonna tell you what I felt about Queen and Slim. The Central Park 5 and Mercy have also cast doubt and negative reactions to what is perceived to be injustices to African Americans. While theater is just that, theater, and sometimes an over-dramatization, there is still some impact on our community. As the very essence of policing is being debated around the world, those leading police agencies, chiefs and sheriffs, can help change the narrative through a commitment to proactively implement initiatives that promote a culture of trust, building, and legitimacy. And I know for a fact that the chiefs you have, the ones that I know that are in your communities, are doing just that and doing it well. They're doing it in Seattle. They're doing it in Dallas. They're doing it in many cities around the country, being honest about what we as law enforcement agencies need to be about. We must stop looking for the community to change their feelings toward us. We must be the change we want to see within our community. We must be honest about historical injustices, own up to the atrocities perpetrated by those who wore the same uniform we wear today, and demonstrate that we care about the future of our Black and brown children, that we have become weary of witnessing another Black young person shot and killed. And the way I added up, I aggregated. 1 shot, 2 going to jail. 2 shot, 3 going to jail. And when you start adding those numbers, I can tell you we had 16,000 homicides in the United States last year. When you think about 16,000 homicides, you also need to think about how many folks went to jail because of those homicides, and how many encounters between police and community members went the wrong way too. Our communities are becoming annihilated right before our eyes. We are an endangered species. Who better to impact change than the guardians who wear the badge? In 2019, as I said, there were 16,000 homicides. But there were many more shootings where people were just injured. When we have aggravated assaults, that was a homicide where somebody got lucky. If you really think about it. Because an aggravated assault is basically somebody shooting at somebody that they intend to kill. But what happens is somebody gets lucky and they just might get hit in the leg or the arm or whatever. But just think if those numbers turned out to be homicides as well. The foundational principle and the milestone 2015 National Strategic Plan that our President Obama put out, the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. That report affirms that no single factor has been more crucial to reducing crime levels than the partnership between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve. Many cities have communities with a variety of racial and ethnic backgrounds and cultures, and it's important that our officers be able to communicate effectively to people that don't look like them. We must understand the cultural norms of different groups, but that's a part of the training that our leadership has to ensure that our officers get. The task force report further states that since the last 3 decades, policing has become more effective, better equipped, and better organized, yet polls indicate that the public's confidence in police has remained flat. And among some populations of color, confidence has actually decreased. So our work to regain public trust and strong relationships is really cut out for us. Our vision for the future must incorporate principles outlined in the most recent reports on the 21st Century Policing Report. Now, there is a new report that's about to come out under this administration. The Crime Commission's report is going to come out. It's a task force of individuals put together like the task force that was put together under Obama's administration. I have no doubt in my mind that that work is going to be important work too. It's going to be done by some very, very learned and experienced individuals. But I can't believe that that task force won't come out with anything different than what was in the 21st Century Policing Report. Sometimes we have to change things just to have a different name and a different author. But I know for a fact that we will probably come to the same conclusions about what community policing will be like or should be like in our communities. So I applaud those who continue to engage in research in the criminal justice field from an academic vantage point to find solutions, and those who work in our communities like Noble, where our members, like those of you in the New York chapter, are facilitating our signature program called the Law in Your Community. That is an amazing training program where we actually bring young people in a classroom setting and we take them through different scenarios. It's kind of like giving them the talk so that they can act out what a police traffic stop actually looks like. And so they get an opportunity to help officers understand how the officer's behavior can help send things the wrong way. The kids get an opportunity to be the passenger in the car, and then they get an opportunity to be the police officer. And when they get a chance to be the police officer, you'd be surprised how many of them shoot folks because they, and I'm not just saying, you should come to some of those classes. I also recently had a Law in Your Community program at my agency in Durham. Not only did we do the practical exercise of the traffic stop, we also let our young people experience the shooting simulator, where they were able to look at different scenarios and make decisions about what kind of force they should use. I said either they play a whole lot of games where they're killing people, or that reality made them realize that the split-second decisions that are made can sometimes be made the wrong way. So I say to you, we've got to keep working with our young people. We've got to keep working with our officers so that they understand this new generation that we have to work with every day. We must encourage our young people not to just understand us, but we understand them. So as I close, let me inspire you just a little bit on a short story that sort of inspires me when I think of diversity and challenges and the things that we have to go through. There were these 3 men trekking through the woods in a jungle, and they came upon a raging river. And when they came upon this raging river, they didn't know how they were going to get to the other side so that they can get back to home base. So the first guy said, well, let me just pray and ask God to give me the muscles in my arms and the muscles in my legs so I can swim over to the other side. So he jumped in the river and he swam. He almost drowned, but he made it to the other side. And then the second man said, just give me the equipment that I need. So he asked God for a boat and some oars. He began to row. He almost capsized twice, but he made it over to the other side. And then the third man said, God, just give me the brains, give me the wisdom, give me the intellect to make it over to the other side. And God turned him into a woman. So she took out a map, a compass. She walked 50 yards upstream and crossed a bridge to the other side. Now, I ended on that note because I want you to understand how important it is not to stereotype the people that you work around every day, the people that you come in touch with every day. Everybody brings something to the table. Everybody, no matter what color, no matter what race, no matter what sexual origin, we all bring something to the table. So I want to thank you all for your attention tonight. I want to thank John Jay College and the New York City chapter of Noble for inviting me and for all the hospitality. And remember, we are hiring in North Carolina. I was here first, so don't even go over there. Who wants to go all the way to the West Coast anyway? They got coronavirus out there. All kidding aside, let's be very cognizant that that virus is a very serious thing that's going on in our country. And I would be remiss not to say that we all need to be very careful about how we take personal care of ourselves and how we interact with others and everything. Go get you some wipes if they haven't gotten them all off the store shelves yet. But again, I wish you the best in your careers. And remember, we can all make a difference. We can all make a difference. Thank you.
We're going to do a little Q&A now. Here's the rules of the road. I'm going to lean towards students, so when I see students' hands go up, I'm going to lean towards them first. For others, we'll take you as well, but I want to hear from the students. And 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, that's fine. My time is your time.
Okay, you heard that. So, first question, anybody? No, you raised your hand.
I wanted to know, how do you stand up?
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. I wanted to know how to join the collegiate chapter of Noble.
Awesome. And that's very easy to do. And of course, the New York City chapter will be glad to get with you on that. We're starting one at North Carolina Central University, HBCU in North Carolina, yeah. And we've also got a Delaware chapter. So our collegiate chapter is really critical to us because our young people are the ones that come in and have all kinds of ideas and think about things that impact them every day that sometimes we don't think about. So we make sure that they have scholarships when scholarships are available. We're trying to ensure that they have opportunities to come to our conferences. And when they come to our conferences, they sit in forums and they help us with solutions. So we'll be glad to get somebody with you to join our collegiate chapter. Thank you.
Okay, great question. Anybody else? Just show me your hand and here I am. Okay.
Don't be scared.
Come on.
They're hungry. Y'all ready to eat some dinner, huh?
Yes, well, we have one
Okay.
in front. Thank you.
Hi, Jessica Gordon-Emhard. I wanted you to talk to us a little bit about what you think we should be teaching our students to prepare them to really be good community police officers. If if that's their choice, or to be involved in community justice?
Okay. There are a myriad of subject matters that would be really good. I think it's important for people who aren't in the industry to understand the various processes, procedures, and the whys behind, like I have people to ask, why is it that they didn't shoot him in the leg? It seems like, a lot of people ask that question. It seems like a very good question, because number one, that weapon should never be pulled out anyway unless it's a life or death situation. That your life as an officer or a third party's life is in danger. That's the only time the weapon is supposed to be used. So the training is not to maim anybody. If it requires maiming or detaining someone, then officers are trained with all kinds of other means to do that. They have a whole litany of equipment on their tool belts, everything from tasers to you name it. And then sometimes just voice commands. So as we talk about use of force and the continuum of force, it's really important to have subject matters that help our young people understand what is the continuum of force. The continuum of force is really that the first thing I'm going to do is try to talk to the person. The second thing I'm going to do is try to put some distance between me and the person if I can. The third thing would be I might have to put my hands on an individual. And if that's not working out, I may have to move to another level. It could be that I use an aspeton. It could be that I use a taser. So I think those types of procedural kinds of courses that are provided to folks so that they understand more about law enforcement. And I also think that the classroom setting should be a setting that presents implicit bias classes, because there's implicit bias in everybody, not just police. People have implicit bias about police. May not have ever had an encounter with a police officer before. I can't stand police. I hate police. Don't even know why. And then, I just think that, having that well-rounded sort of, not just really about how do we, resolve community issues, social problems and things like that, but really learn more about law enforcement, even if you're not going into this particular career field. Yeah, thank you for that. That was a good question. Anybody else have a question?
I'm coming your way. Oh, now look at y'all. All right, here we go. I like that. Let's go. The student first. You're a student too, right? But I kind of saw her first.
Cool. Hi. You can hold the mic. It's okay.
I can hold it?
Yeah. Hi. Hi, how are you? My
good.
name is Dora. I'm a future criminal defense attorney. I want to know, just as a woman of minority and color, I would hate to find myself in a position where I would counsel a police officer and he or she is on the opposite side of the law. Now I'm in a position where it's like me versus them.
Right.
What can we do as just people of minority and color to put pressure on other police officers of minority and color to actually just do the right thing so we don't find ourselves in these encounters? Because I would hate to be in a situation like that where it is another brother or sister and it's
a police officer
right,
who did the wrong thing. It happens.
Accused,
it happens
right.
all the time, believe it or not. Police departments are no different than Coca-Cola, IBM, and all the other places. Sometimes folks end up in the organization that don't necessarily need to be in the organization, and sometimes officers do bad things. When I was in Atlanta, there were a group of officers that were actually committing bank robberies. So, when you have individuals like that, sometimes you can't worry about what color they are. You just got to do the right thing. And I know that puts you in a very precarious situation, especially as a defense attorney. That's a hard, job anyway for anyone. But I would say that, don't think that just because folks wear the uniform every day, like I said earlier, the majority of officers don't come to work thinking that I'm going to work so I can go shoot somebody. That's not what they come to work for. Sometimes they make bad decisions and things don't end up the right way. But for the most part, most officers come to work every day and they want to do the right thing. So thank you for your question.
So back here, Madam Chair.
And any of my professionals that are in the room that have any input, yes, I'm putting you on the spot. You can help answer some of these questions. Wealth
Hi.
of knowledge, yes.
Hello, my name is Victoria, and I'm a student at, Long Island Business Institute. I have a question. It's going back to what you were talking about.
Should I answer her question since she's not a student here? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
And you were speaking regarding preventing crime and disorder and incorporating new policy. And in regards to your, my question is, how would you operationalize the police and the dream together?
In the community?
Yeah.
So let me tell you some things that not just my agency is doing. We are actually putting together a community task force to help develop policies, to help review policies, to oversee, and I'm pretty sure NYPD probably has a citizens review board too, don't they? Yeah, to oversee various types of incidents that occur. So we are really trying to be more transparent in the development of, say for instance, something as simple as how officers utilize body-worn cameras. When is that camera turned on? When is it turned off? Some people ask, why didn't the officer have the camera turned on during this particular interview? That's part of that education. It's because when you have certain kinds of victims, if I'm interviewing a 5-year-old that is the victim of a sexual assault, that officer's camera does not need to be on during that time, mainly because you have to take under consideration the sensitivity of the case. So there are times when officers' cameras are turned off and it's in the policy, but that policy development, sometimes that conversation with community members, then they understand why, and they can be a force multiplier for the message to get the communication out to other community members of why officers are doing what they're doing. So some of that is basically being assertive enough to get community leaders to come in and be a part of the process, and having officers to understand too that we can no longer operate in a silo, that we have to work with our community, especially when we're trying to investigate crimes. Community members aren't going to want to give us information that we need if the first time that I'm talking to them is because a crime was committed. But if I go to a community member and it's somebody who sat on one of my boards, I don't even have to go to them. They'll pick up the telephone and call me and tell me what is going on in their community because the relationship is already built. So it's really more about being more assertive and taking the initiative to create opportunities for community members to be more engaged. I just started an interfaith council. Every clergy of any kind of religious background in the city of Durham can be a part of my interfaith council. The interfaith council, if you think about it, people who run churches and have synagogues and have worship institutions, they touch more community members than anybody. Because everybody is somewhere either on Saturday morning or Sunday morning or whenever their worship period is. And to have those individuals involved in conversations, it's a force multiplier. They can help with that messaging. I also use them as an opportunity to be transparent to the public. If I have a shooting, I send out a listserv to my clergy members to say, yes, there was a shooting at this particular location. They'll get it sometimes before the news gets it because it's harmless information and it helps dispel rumors too. So finding ways to communicate and be transparent. Hopefully that helped answer your question. I'll be available afterwards
All right,
too.
I'm sorry, Chief Best, I see your hand, but I'm here with a student who has a question. Please.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tashika. I'm a human service community justice major, but I'm focusing more on mental health counseling. I would like to know, where does social work fit in with Noble?
Well, we have all kinds of training programs. Many of our officers are crisis intervention trained. I have about 40% of my patrol officers that are certified in crisis intervention because we're finding that a lot of instances that occur are times when our officers don't need to take somebody to jail, they need to get them help. because they're suffering from some type of mental crisis. So that whole social services piece, you need to be definitely partnering with Noble. Come to our conferences. There's opportunities to be an associate member of our organization. You don't have to be a sworn. We've got our associate representative who sits on the national board. She's sitting right here, Ms. Michelle Teje. And our associate members, yes, they do a lot of work. They're in all kinds of fields. Some of them are sworn officers, but not executive level. But we have individuals that are judges. We have individuals that are attorneys, that are members of Noble, social workers that are members of Noble. Thank you. Somebody else?
Okay, so I'm going to reintroduce, for those who came late, so I got to do it because I got the microphone. The first female
Yes.
African-American police chief in Seattle, Washington, member of Noble, Chief Carmen Best.
Yes. Woohoo!
Thank you. So I have both. First, I want to just say to Chief Davis, it's such an honor to be here. I know her personally. This woman is wonderful. It's the truth. She is wonderful. I was just going to piggyback on what you were saying about building community. I think the question came from somewhere over here in the audience about all of the programs that we are working on, all of us leaders through Noble and other places, to make sure that we have opportunities to build community. So I wanted to highlight one of the people from my command staff, which is Chris Fisher, who's here, because he is a PhD in criminal justice, and he got that PhD right here
Yes,
at John
he did.
Jay. Yes. And he has
I'm trying to
developed-
steal him.
No, I'm keeping her
Not
away,
working.
keeping her at bay. But one of the things he did, and I would like you to say just a few words about it, was we have a disparity project where we turned in 2 sets of research, and you could talk more about how it went. I don't think anybody else in the country has done it, and it really was bringing in community members to talk about disparity. Why do we have disparate outcomes? Why are more people of color having these negative interactions with police? And we're looking at it holistically, right? So I thought it was really important because I don't know that anybody's actually done the research, brought community members in. I'll let you talk about it. But I thought it was really important and really critical because it's, we want people to follow up on this, especially you students of criminal justice, to learn more about some of the underlying causes and what we might do to dig a little deeper. So I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Chief. I'll be really quick because it gets complicated. But we're under a federal consent decree, and we're finishing it up. We're in the last couple weeks, days, hopefully. And one of the requirements was most of our consent decree was around use of force, but there have been concerns around bias in policing. Bias and disparity are not the same thing. And so we wanted to look at, could we statistically show where there was disparity and what type of incidents? There's disparity in healthcare, in housing, there's disparity in everything. So no surprise, there's disparity in policing. But we worked with some researchers. There's no method out there that's 100%, but we zeroed in on what we thought we could do with the data we had. And we saw there was very clear disparity amongst people of color, be it Black, Hispanic, Asian, they were in the different categories, but primarily around when someone was frisked, and when a gun was pointed at them. First report, that's what that did. It identified where is it happening and to what extent. But that didn't tell you the why. So then what we did in our next step, which was more of a pilot and we got to keep doing it, was we found the incidents of that where policy wasn't at play. It was, there are incidents where officers don't have a choice. By policy, if you're doing a high-risk warrant, the gun is out and at the ready. So we excluded those, but we found the other incidents where an officer pointed a gun at someone of looking at people subjects who are white, Black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, and then we brought the community groups in who matched up with those, and we watched those and we talked about them and we said, what's going on here? What would the officer might have missed? What did the people involved might have? How were they feeling this incident? And we got an initial for a pilot, some pretty good, I think, first recommendations, a lot around how specific does a description of a subject need to be for you to stop them? He was wearing black, white, and red shoes. Well, happens to be a lot of people have black, white, and red shoes. And if that's the one thing in a neighborhood where there's a shooting you're looking at, you're going to have some disparity because you're not basing it enough on the specificity of the person in terms of how long it's been since the event. So we're going to keep doing that. But it engaged the community a lot in this conversation. If we want to understand what's happening in that incident, not what policy is driving it. We have policy discussions elsewhere. But what's happening in that interpersonal interaction that maybe we aren't aware of from a police department side?
Very good. Thank you. That's some good work.
Last thing I'm going to say about data, and I'm glad you brought it up, is that's one way that you can really be transparent to the community is sharing your data. We collect traffic stop data to track demographics, to track the jurisdiction or that particular community, to determine whether or not there are too many traffic stops occurring in a particular neighborhood or a particular demographic. That data is provided on our website. We also track use of force data and provide that to the community. We have sort of a criteria if we have individuals in the department who have X amount of complaints and they're similar complaints, 2 complaints of the same officer of the same thing, something is telling us that that officer might need to be monitored. We provide that information too, and we also tell the community what happened in that instance. When we did the investigation, we determined that yes, that officer was actually at fault, or we have the information that's provided to them of whether or not the officer was exonerated and why the officer was exonerated. So just being transparent and providing data to the community, I think, is really important as well.
Okay, let's give our speaker a round of applause. So for those who are new to this is noble, right? That's what we do every day. So now, Madam President, I need you to stay there for a second and ask. Yeah, there's a couple of, and Madam President, I need you to join us on the stage. And Madam President Harrison, I need you to join us on the stage as well, please. Got a lot of presidents going on here.
Am I going up?
Yes, you are. Got you. Okay, so now it's time to say thank you in a more official way. So first, we have a bag here from John. Yeah, that. I knew it was there. I know it. John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Please do. And then inside we have an umbrella, which is a John Jay umbrella, which will not open, but trust me, it's a John Jay umbrella. But also in this bag we have for you, from the New York chapter, something we give to all our speakers from the Lloyd Seeley Lecture. And basically it's a replica of a picture of Lloyd Seeley with a little girl in Harlem. And the words themselves, it says, so we present this to the Honorable Chief Cerelyn Davis, Chief of Police in Durham, North Carolina, Police Department, for your words and support of the annual Lloyd G. Seeley Lecture Series, March 5th, 2020.
Thank you so much.
Bravo. Okay, for the attendees, one thing Noble also does very well, we network, we get together, we share. So as we leave here, as you go left to the elevators in the anteroom, there's some food and refreshments there. We invite you to stay with us for a while and mingle, meet folks, and say hello to the chief. Thank you again. Thank you.